Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast presented by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. I'm CJ Baumgartner, joined by Ian Rivers. And Ian, we have Jared Rubado, the sports editor of the Bemidji Pioneer, joining us here. And we're going to make him wait just a second as we talk about the good folks over at Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. Once a Beaver, always a Beaver. The Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation is here to keep that green and white pride going strong for its 50,000 graduates around the world. From scholarships that open doors for students to events that bring BSU alumni and friends together, you can get connected, give back, and leave a legacy at Bemidji State. Whether you're a proud BSU grad, a local supporter, or just love cheering on the Beavers, come be a part of the action at bsualumni.org. That's bsualumni.org. BSUALUMNI.org. Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation, proud sponsors of the Beaver Banter podcast. All right, Ian, jumping in again, welcoming in Jared Rubado, Bemidji Pioneer sports editor, covering Bemidji State men's and women's hockey here throughout the year. Jared, welcome back on to the program.
Thanks for having me, fellas. It's been a fun year at the rink so far, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, fun weekend. All I can say is God bless Northern Michigan, man. They're going through it over there right now. Friday night, 7-3 victory. Connor McLennan, 4 goals, and then to double down, Northern Michigan, who knows what happened, but Saturday they only had 10 forwards. So make it even worse for him. And then a 6-2 victory. Oliver Peer gets a hat trick. We were hoping Casper Magnuson would get another hat trick. We wanted all the hat tricks. But yeah, 6-2 victory on Saturday. And a 6-point sweep, which was something that the Beavers desperately needed, it felt like, in this series, Jared, as they've been struggling to put together the 6-point sweeps. I'm not going to complain with 5 and 4 and even 3 points on the road at the McGinnis Student Ice Arena, but it is nice to get all 6 points from this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a little surprising to look up because I was, pretty sure they didn't have one last year, but I had to double check on Saturday when I was going through my, post-game research and stuff. And it had been since they won the MacNaughton Cup. That was the last time they'd done it. And it's not that surprising considering how up and down last year was. I know it was a great November, obviously with the big wins over Minnesota Duluth, North Dakota, Minnesota State. They had a 5-point sweep against St. Thomas in that stretch in November. And then the bottom kind of fell out at the start of December against Michigan Tech, and they didn't really find it again until mid to late February. And from there, they just really couldn't find their footing, especially in regulation. And you kind of wondered if it was going to be a little similar this year too. Obviously they start the year with a 5-point sweep of Augustana at home, where they only gave up, I believe, 1 goal or maybe 2 goals in the entire series. 2 goals. Thank you, Ian. You go on the road to Bowling Green and you pick up 4 out of 6, and it's the most they've ever picked up at Slater, which nobody will have any complaints about that, considering Bemidji State's history of playing in Slater. And then right after that, it's Lake State at home, and Lake State gets an extra attacker goal, and now you had to win another one in overtime. You take 2 games to overtime against Tech, and now you're sitting here being like, is this team addicted to going to overtime? Like, can they win in regulation at home again? But yeah, Northern Michigan was kind of what the doctor ordered a little bit. And like you said, Ian, I mean, talk about a team that's fighting it right now, not only on the ice, but in the training room too. 10 forwards, and they had another couple of kids get banged up. I know Caden Galt took a lick. Joe Schiller left the game on Saturday too. They finished that game with, I believe, what was it? They had 17 skaters as a whole, and I think they only finished with 16, maybe even 15 skaters at the end of the game. So tough. It's just tough. Especially for a team that's already got an uphill battle in front of them. But it couldn't have been a better time for them to come to Bemidji this weekend too. And I think it was interesting that, you kind of look at Friday's game and how it played out. And yeah, they gave up 3, but one of them was on just a defensive breakdown late in the third period. Northern got a power play goal, and really it was kind of over early in the first period. And it never really felt like it was going to be a game. And then Saturday, though, I thought Northern, despite having only 17 skaters to start the game, played much better. And
yes,
Tom Serratori said it after. He said that he thought they were the better team 5-on-5, and I don't know if I totally disagree with that. Northern looked like they had a lot more jump. Tough weekend for William Graham. Not sure how many of those 12 goals he gave up he wants back. A lot of them were really, really good chances too. But yeah, now it's but you're in first place to start the CCHA season. You get a little bit of a break this weekend from CCHA play against North Dakota. But it is a good start. And I think now the question, though, is, how can they take this into the second half? You got one more league series before the league season turns over. You got a month in between without a game, a full month without a game. I saw a bunch of people on Twitter today talking about how Penn State will not play a game in the month of December. But Bemidji State's in a very similar position to that, going from December 6th to January, first weekend in January without a game. So they have an exhibition against the Gophers in the middle of that too. But yeah, it's a really, really, really good spot to be in right now, considering you've already played Michigan Tech, you've already gone on the road to Bowling Green, you already, you'll have both your series done against Augustana once it's all said and done after the first half, and it's really exciting. It's a lot of fun to be at the rink right now.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a lot of fun to be at the rink. This team has come out strong, and I think, obviously considering they had to go up to Alaska, and it's not the toughest opponents that you had to face there, but I think just the way Bemidji State started the year, you kind of had a feeling like this group was going to be able to be, how good could they be? We didn't really know, but I think you knew right away, you're like, we have a chance to see some fun hockey this season. What has been kind of the strongest area? What's been the calling card of the 2025-26 Bemidji State hockey team so far?
It's interesting because I never would have guessed I'd ever say this a year ago, but I believe it's their team speed. That was a big area of focus going into the offseason. Serratori and I had talked about it countless times of how they needed to be faster and how it was a big emphasis on them to add speed, whether through the U Sports transfer portal, the traditional transfer portal, or through the CHL and freshman recruits. And they certainly did it. Oliver Peer is one of the fastest kids on this team, and he's got 19 points in 16 games this year with 10 goals. Adam Fleming plays bigger than his speed, or plays faster than his size too. And you kind of add a heavy kid like that on Magnuson. That's a fast line that's got 55 points in 16 games this year. Then you look at a kid like Max Nemestikov. He is fast. He's strong. It's speed, but it's also speed within the way that the Beavers want to play. And that's the important part. Is they've had guys who have been really fast, but maybe they're a little bit more one-dimensional in that speed, and that it comes with skill, but maybe a lack of what they can do in the corners or winning those one-on-one battles. They have guys with speed who can still play the way that they want to play, and that's a gritty brand of hockey. Nemestikov is a perfect example of that. You look at the speed they have on the blue line this year with Hudson Thornton. I don't know if they've had a defenseman with this much skill to them since Eric Polkamp 2 years ago and Kyle Loaf 2 years ago. I kind of like to look at a lot of the returners that are getting to play with a little bit more speed this year because of their line mates and who they got with them. I think Jake McLean's playing with more speed on the fourth line. Noah Quinn, Kirkland Irie, who's still looking for his first goal. But again, it's a different looking style of hockey this year, and I think it goes back to that increase in speed. And to have it come without the sacrifice of that gritty, defense first, that punishing style of hockey too, is what's been really the most impressive part.
Yeah, I was at the games this weekend, and I have been to a lot of Beaver games in my 10 years ish following this team, and I do think that this is the fastest I've ever seen them on the ice. Like immediately from puck drop Friday night, like especially that first line, it's like whoa,
yeah.
Like they're flying. The power play unit, this might be the best power play unit I've ever seen Bemidji State have. Like you see Riley Funk, Adam Fleming, Casper Magnuson, Hudson Thornton, and Oliver Peer out there. It's like, I'm thinking back to 2017. I know they had a pretty good one with Marinaccio and Jerry Fitzgerald, and those guys were good too. But man, this this team is one of the better offensive teams I've seen, and the top line is taking a lot of credit for that. But there is guys that are starting to grow into their own. Max Nemetsnikov, I thought, had a really good weekend this weekend. He had the shorty on Saturday night with a really good move. Grandma was pulled out of the net a couple times and skated around. I know that Casper Magnuson did that to him on Friday night and just went right around him. But yeah, offensively, I think is the biggest surprise to me this season. And it, we kind of predicted it coming into the season just with the roster that they had built, but I don't know. I mean, from the first game against Alaska Anchorage, and again, it's Alaska, but it was pretty evident. Jared, you brought up the good start that they're having. I wanted to go back and look at through 10 CCHA games, what the points pace has looked like over the last few years. They're at 23 points through 10 games so far this year. The last 2 years, they started their first 10 games with 16 points. In 2022, they had 20 points. You have to go all the way back to 2021, where they had 24 points right out of the gate. That team was really good until the bottom fell out in January and they lost like 7 of 8 games. They kind of backed into the CCHA playoffs, and then they went to the infamous MacNaughton Cup championship game down in Mankato, where they were, a goal away from going to the NCAA tournament. So that team was very good. And I think that this team is right on par with them in terms of talent.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up the power play too, because I think last year specifically, that felt like a bigger issue. And just there were a lot of I think they had all the pieces there, especially that you had the right center on the draws and Jutting. Mitch Wolf was getting some power play time. Issa Parek was getting some power play time, and it kind of found its footing a little bit towards the end of the year. But then they come out this year, and what was it? 4 power play goals this past weekend. Seems like they're getting at least one, if not more, every single weekend now in league play, and that's been a big differentiator. Penalty kill, I think, this weekend was a little bit stunted in that too. Northern had a couple power play goals, but we're talking about a penalty kill that also started the year through its first 6 games at like 67%, and now it's just a little bit better, and it's getting a little bit better each time. And so, yeah, the special teams aspect is really important. Their penalty kill is now up to 79.4% with a 23.3% power play. Mm-hmm. A good rule of thumb in hockey is if your power play percentage and your PK percentage add up to over 100, you're doing something right. And right now it's at like 102.7%. So if you want to do the fun math there, that's the Brainerd math, by the way. So, it's really interesting. I think what's more interesting about this too is that they're doing this without Issa Parek on the power play because he's still banged up, working his way back from an injury, and you wonder how much better it could even get on that second unit too. I think they like Thornton on that first unit quite a bit. It's hard not to. He's leading the all defensemen in points this year for Bemidji State. But there's a reason why Issa Parek was named CCHA, all preseason team and was part of the all rookie group stuff last year too, is because he brings so much skill and he's a really, really smart player on the blue line offensively too. And so, and I think what's interesting about that too, not to go off on a little bit of a tangent for the defenseman, but they paired up Issa Parek with Max and Vig to start the year, and Vig took his lumps early. It wasn't always pretty for him, especially against Duluth and St. Cloud. A lot of kids took their lumps against Duluth and St. Cloud. It's a little bit of a culture shock going from playing Anchorage to going to playing St. Cloud. And they felt it. They felt every single bit of it. But I think Vig is starting to look like the player that he was maybe projected to be before the season too. And the game is slowing down for him, and he just feels so much more comfortable game in and game out. And now if they could pair him with Parek when Parek comes back, hopefully it's this weekend, that would be massive, absolutely massive, because I think defensively there's still some to be desired there long term. Obviously this past weekend wasn't the best example of where this team needs to go or could be at defensively too. Just Northern is such a weird series you play every year now, because 2/3 of the game you're going to spend it in their zone. But defensively they were great against Michigan Tech. They only gave up 3 goals in regulation and 4 for the series, and that's a tough team and a tough building to do that in. Bowling Green too, obviously they gave up the 2 goals late in that third period, but it's another tough building and another tough team to do that against. Only 2 against Augustana. What was it against Lake State? I think 4 against Lake State in 2 games. Those are really, really impressive league numbers, and I think we're going to get a real good look at what they look like defensively this weekend against another high-powered team. But adding Perek back into that, so and it allows Vig to play the game that he is required to play. And I mean, let's look at last year, right? I mean, they had Tony Fulmer and Will Magnuson, who were 2 shutdown defensemen, and they left. They graduated, and you bring in a lot of high upside guys in terms of what they can do offensively. Hudson Thornton was one of the highest scoring defensemen ever in his season in the WHL. He set a bunch of Prince George records for a defenseman in terms of offensive output. But there were some questions about, how could he handle some of the defensive responsibilities at the college level. Mitch Wolf is still the most underrated player in the CCHA in my opinion, just because of how he's so versatile. If you need him to be a shutdown guy, he can do it. If you need him to go out and get you a goal, he could probably do that too. So I think once they get a little bit healthier defensively, it's going to all come together. It should all come together even better than it is now. But like you said, Ian, 2021-22, it was a great start. And then they kind of fell apart a little bit in the second half. And it's not to say that it's in the back of the mind of anybody there, because they don't have anybody left on that team. But it's never going to be as easy as it seems, right? You can look at a schedule in January and say, okay, well, we play these teams, and these teams. We should be able to get these points out of them. And when you start doing that, you get swept in regulation by Ferris and Northern at home. That's just, it's counting the chickens before they hatch. So that'll be really interesting to see how they make that adjustment in December and that long break into the second half of the league schedule.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff here. I know as we look at the CCHA standings right now, Bemidji State in 10 games played, 23 points. Bowling Green in second with the same amount of games played at 19. Minnesota State has 18 points in 8 games. Michigan Tech in 8 games as well has 15. Augustana, 12 points in 7 games. St. Thomas, 7 points in 5 games. Lake State, 6 points in 8 games. Ferris State, 5 points in 8. And then Northern Michigan, 0 points throughout 6 games. So, kind of is where Bemidji State has set themselves up in the conference right now. Just kind of looking at the conference kind of league-wide, I know you guys do a lot over on some of the stuff you do, Jared, kind of going around the conference and around the CCHA and doing stuff. How is the league shaping up this year? I know it's been a little interesting, but kind of who are the teams that Bemidji State right now is going to be seeing in the rearview mirror, as right now, as of recording this podcast pre-Thanksgiving, leading the CCHA?
I fully expect after Thanksgiving, Bemidji State to be in second place. Minnesota State is 5 points behind, and they play Northern this weekend. So that'll get them up to speed. In CCHA.
The same Northern team that beat Minnesota State last year, Jared?
Yes, and I believe also took them to overtime in another game, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Those were the games that got all the Mavs fans we'll just say very passionate on social media, considering the rest of the league as a whole, disregarding their own losses. But, I digress. The Minnesota State, I don't think looked like the team I expected them to be right out the gate. I expected a team that was going to be the hardest to score on in the CCHA by a mile. Bringing back Tracy, bringing back almost your entire defensive core that was so good last year. And replacing all of your forwards, though, was going to be a big, a tall ask out of Minnesota State. But they started the year being, kind of okay in scoring. And defensively, I think they gave up 6 to Omaha. They had a couple of weird ones in there where it's 3 or 4 after a season where they didn't give up 3 goals or more than 3 goals all of last year, at least for most of it. So, and now they're starting to kind of shape up into, okay, they're going to score 3 or 4 a game. Good luck. Like, try and you're going to have to find a way to score 4 against them. But they're not as high powered as they were last year, but still, I mean, it's a team that's they're going to be in first place at the end of this, at the end or after Thanksgiving this weekend. And but the difference there is that it's not as steep of an uphill climb as it is for anybody in the CCHA. Rhett Pitlick isn't coming through that door, so that's the saving grace for the other 8 CCHA teams. I think Bowling Green is kind of maybe around where we expect them, maybe a little bit better in my opinion. I didn't expect them to be this good out of the gate, especially after their opening series. What was it, against Niagara? Yep. Where they got swept on the road by an Atlantic team. That was tough. But they beat the brakes off of Ferris State. Obviously going into St. Thomas, that's a tough road trip for them, but they get out of there with some points. And so, yeah, they're going to sit in third place. And Michigan Tech had a great start. Obviously, they took their licks against, Minnesota State this past weekend. But I think when we look at the CCHA as a whole, it's shaping up to be a little bit different than it has been in past years, where there's almost like there's 3 tiers of teams instead of there being, a couple teams at the top, everybody in the middle, and maybe one at the bottom. But right now, there's a gap. There's a significant gap. I think you got Bemidji State, Michigan Tech, Minnesota State, Bowling Green that are all kind of comfortably in that top 4 right now. Maybe not Michigan Tech after this past weekend. Then you have some tweener teams like Augustana and St. Thomas who just haven't played enough games yet to know who they truly are. I know Augustana has played 7, but it's been a weird schedule where they had the one-off against St. Thomas, and they had a bye this past weekend. So they've only played one CCHA game the past 2 weeks. But St. Thomas and Augustana could go either way. The perception, though, is that they are, have some ground to make up because of all the games in hand they have. Games in hand can only do you so much good. You still have to go play the games and win the games and get the points. And if half of those games are against teams that you're trying to chase, it just becomes a little bit steeper and a little bit steeper. And every loss after that just becomes tougher and tougher. And then you got your 3 teams at the bottom. Lake State and Ferris split this weekend, which neither team could use a split there. I mean, yeah. Either of those teams desperately needed 6, and they each got 3. So I think maybe it was 4 and 2. I think Saturday game went OT.
Yep.
And then Northern obviously is, 0 and 14, sitting at the bottom of the league. So, as for how this goes throughout the rest of the year, I actually kind of expect it to stay pretty tiered. I think the teams in the top half will end up staying in the top half for the most part. One of St. Thomas and Augustana will enter that conversation, and then 1 out of the 5 are not going to get home ice, and it's going to set up for a really, really, really good 4-5 matchup. I do think one of St. Thomas and Augustana will fall a little bit, maybe below their season expectations. I kind of expect it to be Augustana more than St. Thomas. I just think St. Thomas has a little bit more talent. They have a little bit more skill. Their recruiting class was better. They have a better player in Lucas Wallen. St. Thomas has the better goal, or Augustana has the far better goaltending, though. So it's, which of those intangibles went out. Then again, it also wouldn't surprise me if either of those teams are charging for a MacNaughton Cup at the end of the year with all of those games in hand. I mean, Augustana could come out of Thanksgiving, take 6 points off the Beavers, and they're right in the thick of it. So there's a lot in flux, but just with how these gaps are shaping up, it just seems like they get a little bit bigger every week. And it's up to really the bottom 3 teams to make sure there isn't a gap, because it's going to take those teams pulling off 5 or 6 point weekends against a team they shouldn't. But it's a CCHA, so you can almost bank on something like that happening.
Chaos reigns supreme.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's so much time to go. Like the weird thing about this sport is the fact that many teams have this weird month-long gap. Like we have over a month where we don't have a competitive game to play. Mm-hmm. And a lot can happen in that time. A lot can change about your hockey team. And, just any momentum that we might be carrying into the second half could completely vanish. And, but as of right now, it's shaping up to really, like, those top 2 seeds might end up mattering. Like there might be a gap between, we're fighting for top 4 and we're also trying to fight for top 2, because I do think there's a pretty definitive gap, at least so far, with that bottom 3, like you said, Jared, where it's really like, I think any of those 3 teams could take a couple points off of you on a given weekend. But if you're talking about, all right, points are out the window, all we got to do is win games. Mm-hmm. I think those teams are maybe going to be hard pressed as it sits to find 2 wins in a weekend against any team that's especially sitting at the top of the conference.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at, that top 2 race essentially becoming more, really, really important. You're 100% right. Would you rather play a first round series against Augustana or St. Thomas or Lake State and Ferris State? That's a much different first round series right there. And that's no shade on Ferris State or Lake State either, at least not intentionally. I mean, I do think Lake State is a little bit better than their record. I don't think that about Ferris, but I do think that about Lake State. I think they have enough offensively to sneak out a big weekend if they can just put the pieces together defensively. They're getting great goaltending out of Rourke Appleby. I mean, Rourke Appleby was outstanding when he came to Bemidji. And that was a kid that he wasn't even, supposed to play this many games, I think, to start the year. Andrew Oakey was a really accomplished goalie coming out of, I believe it was Saginaw in the OHL. And I think a lot of people maybe expected that to be more of a tandem, myself included. Rourke Appleby's just taken the net and ran with it, and he's got a great story too. He was thrown into the net for Lake State by default last year due to so many injuries, and they had an e-bug backing him up for half a season last year. And now he is one of the best goalies in this league behind Kotai and Tracy, however you want to stack them up. Throw Rathan Robbins in there too if you want to pump your tires. That's no shade on Rathan Robbins. He's one of my favorite kids in the room. So, for Ferris State too, right? I mean, the pieces are kind of there. They have guys who, competed at high levels. 5 kids from Long Island who were a top 30 pairwise team last year, and kids who scored 30 points, kids who scored 20 plus points last year, who've just not been able to find their footing yet in this league. And so maybe it's only a matter of time for them. But to say that, you'd rather play Augustana or St. Thomas instead of one of those two, or even a Michigan Tech who could slip down into that 5 spot or that 6 spot.
Into the 9 spot.
Sure.
No,
Sure.
Probably not.
Probably not, but
a little bit of hating, but
wouldn't that be funny?
That
would be very funny.
We're very partial or nonpartisan. I mean, we're very nonpartisan on this podcast.
Yes. We have clear frame of mind on the Beaver Banter podcast. Yes. Yeah.
So, it's a great point because, I mean, everybody gets so consumed with, okay, who's going to win the MacNaughton Cup and who's finishing top 4. However you finish top 4 is kind of an afterthought, unless it's for the MacNaughton Cup. But there could be a larger emphasis on this year if that cavernous gap keeps expanding and those bottom 3 teams stay put. And it's just a fight between those 3 and the other 6 are fighting for the other top 6 spots. Now you have to be one of the top 4 and preferably one of the top 2 to fight. And 2, if you're top 2, you've essentially a 50-50 shot to host the Mason Cup game. And obviously, right? You're one of the 2 home teams playing in it. You're one of the top 2 seeds. But last year, it didn't feel like anybody was going to host a Mason Cup other than Minnesota State. I know Bemidji State played in that game, but let's be honest, that game fell over halfway through the first period. And 2 years ago, did it feel like anybody was going to host the Mason Cup other than Bemidji State with the role that they went on, right? So it is a little bit more interesting this year, especially if all these, if the top 6 teams are as good as we're expecting, and I do think the league is better as a whole this year, then finishing top 2 and not having to go on the road for a single elimination playoff game could be the difference in you going to the NCAA tournament and not.
Yeah, and I think that there is less emphasis. I don't care as much about maybe having to go on the road. What do you think about that? Would you rather go on the road because it is just one game and it matters that much more, or because they used to have this still be a best of 3 series, and then if you're on the road, for all of those games, then I feel like it, it might matter a little bit more. And I suppose it matters what seed you are and what you're going to tell yourself. It's it's just one game, so I'd rather be at home for it, or it's just one game, I'll go on the road. I don't care. But I do think that helps a little bit with that. Like you said, this year there might be a little bit more emphasis on getting top 2, but most years it's well, if we're not going to win it, just get top 4, host the first round, and then wherever we got to go week 2, we'll figure it out. That.
Yeah, it's kind of a conversation of how greedy do you want to be? How greedy are you willing to let yourself get? But I do think that's interesting, right? It all depends on how the seating shakes out. But if you're sitting at 2 and Bowling Green sitting at 3, and maybe separated by a point going into that last regular season weekend, you don't want to make another trip to Slater.
It's a long road trip.
That is a long road trip to play one game, and it's a tough building. Do you want to go to McGinnis? Do you want to go to Mankato? Maybe they're more okay with going to Mankato because then the home fans will travel a little bit. All the displaced Bemidji State grads around the metro area might go to Mankato there. Same with St. Thomas and Augustana, right? So it's probably more dependent on who they could end up having to travel to. But yeah, definitely, you start to maybe look ahead at the schedule and where the standings could be too. But, at the same time, it still is November. And I think we would have been having a very similar conversation last November about prospecting who could be coming to Bemidji on home ice. And then that conversation went away very, very, very quickly and start the second half.
Yeah. Yeah, the conference was so close last year where, until that Northern Michigan, I don't remember which one was first, but the Northern Michigan and Ferris State home sweeps, getting swept, I should say. Those are where it really felt like the wheels fell off, and it's like, okay, now we're officially fighting to maybe get a 6 or something, like the 5 seed maybe, or I don't know. But up until that point, it was still kind of like, well, if we can just put it together, yes, this is the weekend. We have Ferris State coming to town. We can get back in the top 4, guys. Yeah. And then I went to that series, drove up there, and I left very, very disappointed. And it was like, okay. But yeah, so it very well the conversation could change. So it's a good point. But as of right now, we're riding high, so we kind of just have to roll.
Absolutely. And that's the antithesis of being a fan, is you're winning. So enjoy it. Enjoy the moments. It's so hard, and not to go into the Vikings stuff, right? But it's so doom and gloom as a Vikings fan right now, thinking, oh my God, I have to watch 7 more of these or 6 more of these games and watch JJ McCarthy or whatever quarterback they're going to trot out there next. Please, Max Roseberry.
You're getting John Wofford, and you're going to like it.
But at some part of me just wants to say, you know what? Shut the hell up, Jared. Just take the win over the Bears and enjoy how much fun that night was. Enjoy beating the Lions. It was tough. Last year sucked for so much of that second half. It was tough. It was a dead feeling at the rink. It doesn't take away from the fact that win over the Gophers was great. That win over North Dakota was great. That win over Duluth was great. Beating Minnesota State twice was awesome. And all you got to do is just go into the playoffs feeling good about yourself. And they did last year. They felt really good about themselves and pulled off an upset in the first round. Maybe upset still feels like a stretch because Augustana was so new to the environment, and you can almost see that one coming from a mile away. So just try it. It's tough to tell fans, you almost just want to shake them and be like, enjoy it. Just enjoy what you're watching.
You're watching sports because you like sports. You don't like winning. It's the thing of with sports fans. Do you actually like hockey, or do you just like winning? Because that's if you just obviously you want to see good hockey, as good a hockey as you can. But yeah, exactly. It's a great conversation of at the end of the day, you're watching a very competitive hockey program in a league that they are competing in almost every single year and putting themselves in a position. So it's a very great perspective. To cut it off, we do need to get to an ad break here quickly, and then we're going to talk here about some other areas of Bemidji State hockey and some things like that as we talk here with Jared Rubado of the Bemidji Pioneer. He's the sports editor there. Ian, we have a quick word here from Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation.
Do you want to be a part of the team behind the teams at Bemidji State? Join hundreds of dedicated fans when you donate to Beaver Athletics and help BSU pursue its next championship. Your gift can power your favorite program, establish a scholarship for a student athlete you get to meet, and so much more. Every dollar brings the Beavers closer to raising another trophy. You can add to the proud tradition of success at Bemidji State. So don't wait. Give today at bsualumni.org/Beavers. That's bsualumni.org/BEAVERS.
All right, Jared, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, and now let's kind of take a full deep dive in net for Bemidji State. It's kind of been a bit of a split throughout so far with Rathan Robbins and Max Hildebrand. What have you seen kind of so far in kind of who Bemidji State has had in net this season, and just kind of overall, what does that look like from your perspective?
I'm so glad you asked me about goalies. I could talk about goalies for the whole hour.
Also, do we have an update on Max Hildebrand?
Not yet. I'll find
didn't-
out hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
On Tuesday at the media press conferences. I'll start with Rathan Robbins because I think there's been so many stories to come out of this BSU men's season. Obviously, it starts with the pro players who get eligibility. Irie, the captain, he's such a great kid and obviously so deserving of it. Then, Flameng with a really scary injury. Now he's 20 points in 14 games, right? Oliver Peer, 10 goals and 16, right? There's so many things to talk about in this, and it almost feels like Rathan Robbins has kind of gotten, swept under the rug a little bit, and how cool of a story this is. I mean, he had a great run in the NAHL, probably 3 or 4 years ago now. It would have been actually 5 years ago now, I believe. Goes to the USHL. I don't think it went as well as he had hoped. His save percentage were in the high 80s. And he wasn't on the best team either. It was, I believe, more of a tandem when he was in the USHL. And then he gets brought in to, be the third string goalie behind Matthias Scholl and Gavin Enright. And I think he got one start his freshman year and got pulled. Once Scholl got hurt, it was that game in Mankato where they ended up winning it 7-6. I think he came in relief for Enright one time when Scholl was hurt. Last year, he comes in relief when Scholl had cramps against Duluth. Backstops him to a win. He starts one game the rest of the year, and it was one of those losses to Ferris State. And you're kind of just wondering, like, man, is this kid gonna, get a chance to take the net and make it his? And it's not for a lack of trying either, but a lot of it was situational, right? I mean, he was behind one of the best goalies they've had come through this program in Matthias Scholl, and and they bring in a WHL goalie of the year in Max Hildebrand this year, and I think a lot of people maybe expected that this would be a true tandem to start with Hildebrand taking it maybe around this point, maybe at the midway point or in the second half too. But Rathan Robbins has done everything to keep this net. And it's just a really, really, really cool story of, I think, a lot of perseverance and really having to earn it too. And the way his teammates talk about him, it's different than how they talked about Matthias Scholl. Scholl was otherworldly in how he made some saves. He was due for one of the how did he save that moment a night. So solid. Another kid who overcame a lot of stuff. He was the smallest goalie in college hockey last year, and and then he signs an AHL contract in the offseason. Now I think he's back down in the ECHL now. But for Robbins too, like the way they talk about him, it's all based on his effort and his hard work. And, they say he's addicted to the weight room. He can't get out of there. It's, he's staying back in practice to take extra shots when, especially if you're the starting goalie, you do not need to do that, especially if, maybe one of them's already a little banged up too. So I think it's just so awesome to see that Rathan Robbins is making good on what was probably his best chance to be a starting goalie in college hockey. And, however it ends up, however it shakes out, I know we didn't have the best weekend this weekend, but it was, again, it's Northern Michigan. You're seeing a shot every 10 minutes real time. It's a tough environment to stay absolutely dialed into. But
and the three goals on Friday, I mean, I don't even know how much I fault him for any of those, to be honest with you.
No, I definitely wouldn't say any of them were his fault. And, I think it's cool. I hope he gets a game this weekend against North Dakota, and he certainly deserves it. I'd love to see him play in the Ralph. You get a chance to play in front of all those fans in that atmosphere because he's earned it. And that's really cool. And going into this weekend, he was one of the top goalies in the CCHA statistically. He had the best goals against average. I think it was minimum 6 games played. I think he had a top 3 save percentage under those same minimums. So really cool. He's such an easy kid to like. And a cool anecdote about Rathan Robbins too is I went to the high school girls game on Tuesday, and there's 4 youth goalies sitting there throwing tennis balls at the wall, and standing behind him is Rathan Robbins. And in his free time, he's going to the high school rink. He's helping out youth programs here in Bemidji. He's a kid. He's not even from Minnesota. He's from Anchorage, Alaska. And to kind of ingrain himself in a community like this is just really cool to see. I'm sure a handful of other players, men's and women's, do it. Same with, the other sports around BSU. You see a lot of BSU baseball players helping out with other sports here in town too. But I think when, you play on a Division I sport, maybe you don't feel like you have to do some of those community things, but he's still doing them. And it's just so cool to see a kid like that have the season he's having, and such an easy kid to root for too. So love Rathan. He's earned everything he's gotten this year. And then for Max Hildebrand too, like I said, I'll find out hopefully tomorrow what his return is like, his timetable. But I think he got a really good taste of what college hockey is going to be like right away. After that Anchorage series, he gets the road start against St. Cloud. It was an ugly game. Not for him. I think he had 4 goals on 30-some shots. Gets pulled in his next start against Duluth. He gets the net the next night against Duluth and plays really well. But Bemidji State took 7 penalties and gave up 4 power play goals. And again, how many of those are on Max? You can go through and dissect each of them. But since that Duluth series, he's been really, really good and really sharp. I actually don't think he was that sharp against Michigan Tech, but he's certainly got all the tools to be a really, really good college hockey goalie. And whether that happens, in the back half of this season, or maybe as a sophomore or a junior, at some point, Max Hildebrand is going to be kind of seen as like an Alex Tracy, a Josh Kotai type, the longer he stays in college hockey, because he has all of those tools. And you want to talk about a competitive kid. I have never met a kid as competitive as Max Hildebrand. I mean, I did a half-hour profile interview with him about a month ago. And I don't think he smiled once. This kid is as intense as they come. And he just loves competing, and he loves fighting for what he's earned. And another kid with a really cool story. I mean, his dad is the GM, or is an assistant GM for the Saskatoon Blades. And he told his dad going into the WHL draft, don't draft me. I want to do this my own way. I don't want to be the kid that was drafted by their dad and have that hanging on over my head. I want to earn everything I got. And so, of course, naturally, he was drafted by Saskatoon's biggest rival, Prince Albert. Set up some really good playoff series. I wrote a whole story about it. It's a good one. So really, really cool backstory there. And they have a really good tandem. And I think they have 2 goalies right now that they feel very, very confident with going into any game. And that's not every team in the CCHA can say that right now. Obviously, Augustana and Minnesota State with Kotai and Tracy, they're going to get the net every night. And they're 2 of the best goalies in college hockey, as evident by their additions to the Spangler Cup roster. Like Bowling Green right now, who's starting for them every weekend? I know Steinman had a good weekend a couple weekends ago. I don't know what the numbers were this past weekend against St. Thomas, but I know they gave up 6 on Saturday. Tyler Palmer has started some games. Cole Moore has not looked good. St. Thomas, Will Engman, 3rd-string goalie to start the year, was starting games in NCHC play against them, for them. So, Aaron Trotter hasn't had this kind of season. I think he's been banged up too. Carson Musser, a 2nd-round draft pick for the Utah Mammoth, has not been as advertised this year. Michigan Tech's getting really, really, really good goaltending out of Bartoskevich, so maybe throw him with Tracy and Kotai in there. But for teams that are relying on tandems, Bemidji State has to feel very good about its tandem. Rourke Appleby, again, he's another one who's been really good. But Ferris State, who's starting for Ferris State right now? Is it Martin Lundberg? Is it Hobie Hedquist? Is it Noah Ruprecht, right? Like, they have some questions there. Northern Michigan, right? They're getting good goaltending. They're not getting anything else, but they're getting good goaltending. But that's still a tandem that's just being left out to dry. So I'm really, I think there's a lot to be excited about with whoever starts in the net for Bemidji State right now.
Yeah. I want to speak to Adam Fleming a little bit too. There was a point in time, back in, was it October that we played against St. Cloud State that you were wondering if he was going to play again for Bemidji State. And now, he's got, like you said, 20 points in 14 games. Jared, we had 4 players last year get to 20 points in 36 plus games. And a lot of that has to do, like, scoring is you can only score as many points as maybe your teammates allow you to score. But it's still, like, it's incredible. Like, for a guy like him, it feels like we always have these players too, where it's like they've been a pretty solid piece to the puzzle for 3 years, but they've never really been the guy that you want to go to. And now it feels like Adam Fleming. I don't think he got a point on Friday night, so maybe his streak came to an end. But
No, he did. He had an assist on Friday. His point streak, he has points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 of his last 11 games. He did get one on Saturday against Michigan.
On Saturday. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, he's been incredible, like since the start of the season, and especially since the injury, like that only took him, like I was shocked against Augustana to see him back in the lineup. I was shocked when the line chart came out. And to have him be, maybe you don't want to call him the driving force behind the first line. Like Pierre has been really good.
I would. Too. Yeah, I'd absolutely call him the driving force.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they're all they're all a different wheel, I guess, and he maybe 100%. Is the engine. But it's been incredible to see.
Yeah, the reason why I'd call him the driving force on that first line is Oliver Pierre has had 3 games. Well, he's had 3 games where he hasn't had a point, and one of them was against Minnesota Duluth without Flameng. He's been on Flameng's line all year. Another one was in that Saturday game against Augustana, and then the top line got shut out against Michigan Tech. But they're like you said, with them all being kind of a little bit of a different beast. That's 100% true. Where Pierre is the speed, play, scoring touch on the line. Flameng is the play driving. He's got a big shot, and Magnuson's the heavy, right? Like Casper is the heavy hitter on the line.
Adam Flameng might think he's the heavy. He laid a hit so directly in front of me on Saturday night. Yeah. I don't know how the Northern Michigan player picked himself up off the ice. That was insane.
Nobody on this team has taken bigger hits in the 3 years I've been here than Adam Flameng.
Yeah,
his sophomore year, I swear he got the piss hit out of him every single game at least once.
Is that like just a coincidence thing, or do you think like he just for whatever reason leaves himself susceptible to that?
I think it's the kind of style that a player like him plays, because Riley Funk is exactly the same way too, where he takes a lot of big hits. It's the guys who have to stand in front of the net, go into the corner and win a battle, play tough, play gritty. But yeah, it's interesting. There's only a few. Well, how about you? 3 or 4 last year who hit 20 points?
4.
And Flameng's already there through 16 games. I mean, there's no complaints. He's tied for 6th in the nation in scoring.
Yeah.
I think I expected a little bit of a jump from him offensively this year. He was part of that snake-bitten group last year with Casper Magnuson that just couldn't buy a 5-on-5 goal. And now they're all kind of breaking out together again, especially with Pierre. I think they complement each other so well. And it's funny you bring this up, because before we started recording, I was actually putting together a thing for my weekend rewind of, this is the best line in the CCHA, but comparatively, how do they actually stack up against, the other top lines in this league? And, you look at Michigan Tech with Taden Trembecki, Steven Sardarian, and Isaac Gordon. They've combined for something like 41 points in 14 games. And Minnesota State's top line, now Minnesota State's scoring is way more balanced than Bemidji State's is right now, but Minnesota State's top line of Luigi Benincasa, Liam Watkins, and Alex Zetterberg, they have 33 points in 14 games. St. Thomas has a line with Alex Gaffney, Lucas Wallen, and I believe Ryan O'Neill. They're at 39 points in 3 games. That's about a half a point less per game than Bemidji State right now. And then probably the most potent line outside of that trio for Bemidji State right now is Bowling Green's line with 2 freshmen on it. And Noah Morneau, Dominic Ryman, and Quinn Emerson. They have 36 12 games. So, and the interesting thing about that line, though, is almost all of those points for them have come in November. So those, to me, right now, that Bowling Green line, this Bemidji State line, feel like the best 2 lines in the WCH or in the CCHA. But then you look around the league, you look around the entire country. Minnesota Duluth has the best line in college hockey. It's the Shogabay Plant line. They have 69 points in 16 games. Bemidji State's top line is 55 points in 16 games. That is a 14-point difference. I mean, it's ridiculous what that group's doing. But Michigan has 2 lines. One of them has 53 points. One of them has 66 points, or 56 points. Penn State has a line. I know Penn State and Michigan have jumbled their lines more than Bemidji State have, but Penn State has a line with 57 points. So even if you pull the top teams and their best lines in the country this year. And Bemidji State's top line is right there. It is right there with them. And how much can you expect that to keep going? That's going to be the big question. I still think they do need some secondary scoring to show up a little bit more. That those three players have accounted for essentially a third of Bemidji State's points this year as a whole. I think there's still more out of Kirkland Irie's line. He's just had so many rotating characters that have played with, have centered his line and have played on the wing, but they had a good weekend. I think Irie had a few assists. McLennan's line was really good this week, and obviously he was CCHA Forward of the Week. Riley Funk, one of my favorite players I've ever watched play hockey. I said this on Tech Hockey Guide, but if I had 3 wishes, my first wish would be for $1 million. My second wish would be for 3 more wishes, and my third wish would be for unlimited eligibility for Riley Funk. And it's just because I love watching this guy play. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, and he plays like he's 5'9". But then again, he'll also play like he's 6'8" with how much speed and strength he has. And I think his scoring touch has gone away a little bit in recent weeks. It's still there though. He had 24 points last year in a career best, and he's playing more minutes. He's still this team's best center on faceoff. So there's more secondary scoring to come, but as long as this top line keeps playing like they are, they're going to be in every single game they play.
I wish he would have scored a goal this week, because I had the tweet in the drafts saying, man, Northern Michigan could use a player like Riley Funk.
It's and he obviously, like, granted, I think Bemidji State plays a style of hockey that benefits Funk more than Northern Michigan does, especially when Patolny was there, but he was also battling some injuries when he was at Northern Michigan too. And another one. I wish he could play forever. He's so fun to watch. I can't get enough of him.
Wrapping things up, Jared, kind of putting things towards the future now throughout the rest of the season for Bemidji State. Just what are some of the storylines that you're kind of looking out for, whether it's things the team needs to improve upon, whether it's just kind of things you're watching, players you're watching for a Bemidji State hockey fan throughout the rest of the season? What are some things that they just should be keeping their eye on?
I still think they take too many penalties. That's the big thing that stands out right now, is they just take too many penalties, and it's a controllable thing, right? Like, to some extent you can control how many penalties you do and don't take. But they usually average around 6 to 8 penalty minutes per game. And I believe this year, hang on while I pull it up, they are averaging, 8.8 penalty minutes a game, which is down from where they were at the start of the year, especially in NCHC play. But I think just maybe dropping that down to around 6 is where Bemidji State wants to be at. The penalty kill numbers are okay. Like I said, they're at around 79% now, but it's still not.
Does that penalty shot count against our penalty kill?
I don't think so. I've never really wondered that, but now I got some homework to do once I get
What did you think about that? Like,
smart move by Northern.
Who was it that just decided to dive at the legs of the?
That was Ben Vigneault. That was
it Vigneault? Yeah, I was just like, and I don't know what these guys are coached on, but it's like sometimes I'd rather just like not take the penalty in that situation and let my goalie try to make a save, because if you're going to give a penalty shot anyways, now he's got to try to make the save regardless. So I don't know.
It was a really frustrating sequence too, because Altrichter picked up the puck around the red line, and Vigneault just wasn't skating to stay in front of Altrichter before he caught the pass.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he thought that the click, because it was on the penalty, or it was on the power play for
power play. Yep.
You wonder if he thought that maybe they were just trying to clear the puck instead of throwing a headman pass up. But
either way,
it was really smart by Northern to take the penalty shot too. Obviously, in hindsight, because they scored, but half of that power play would have been 4-on-4. So
when they're down 2 goals, they needed an opportunity to try to get back in the game. So
and what a move by Altrichter. That was gross. And that's the thing about Northern. I still think Northern is better than they were last year. Like they're not gonna. I'm not too keen on them finishing 9th anymore. I know like this weekend was tough, but they have good goaltending. I think they have some skill up front, like Altrichter, Slippick, Galt. Bettens looked good on Friday for stretches. like they have a little bit more than they did last year. And if Ferris and Lake State keep messing around towards the bottom, like Northern's going to have a 6-point weekend this year.
Those series will be really interesting when they end up playing those teams.
Yeah. Back to the kind of the storyline stuff. I think it starts with staying out of the box more. They've had it's also the timing of the penalties have been killer too. You know, you got a lot of momentum at the end of the first period and you take a penalty and now you got to start the second period on the penalty kill. They got to cut that out. I think then too, it's getting your 6 points when you can get them, or getting your 3 points when you can get them is another big one. I can talk until I'm blue in the face about, how much overtime they played and all the overtime stats behind it. But the reason why Minnesota State will most likely be in first place after this weekend is because they have not been able to take as many games in regulation. So, and when the second half of the season rolls around, I think just closing out games needs to be a little bit better. They didn't close out the game against Bowling Green on Friday night on the road. They didn't close it out against Lake State on Saturday at home. You can make the argument they didn't close it out on Saturday at home against Augustana either. They had a lead in that game too. So right there, those are 3 points that could have easily been in your back pocket right now if they had closed out those games. So closing out games and staying out of the box is what I'm looking at.
We've been talking about closing out games for quite a while, Jared. I think you weren't here for it, but our first season
was just the last 30 seconds you could predict.
It was the last 2 minutes of the game. 9 games. They either drop points by allowing a goal to go into overtime, or we're tied and now we're losing because of a goal inside the last 2 minutes of the game. 9 times, and they never got it back from somebody else. They never did it to another team and stole points. It was so frustrating that season.
I did find it interesting because this took like 5 hours of research to get through to do it. But I was trying to find out if they had a stretch where they'd played 6 overtime games in an 8-game stretch. It's actually happened twice in program in D1 history before this. Wow. 2002, 2003, and I believe it was 2012, 2013. I wrote a whole thing about it last week, but these are not unique stretches to this program. They've done this before, and hopefully it just kind of becomes like a little bit of a footnote this year.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of stuff going on in Beaver hockey. Jared Rubado, Bemidji Pioneer sports editor, joining us here on the Beaver Banter podcast. Jared, quickly, we've got a couple minutes left in the pod. Just tell people where they can find all the great work that you're cutting up and the other kind of ventures you're doing out there in media.
Yeah, we'll start BemidjiPioneer.com. That's where you can find all our coverage. Men's and women's hockey. Shout out to the women's team. That was a wild game on Saturday. Holy cow. So go read all about that. We do a podcast called The Reporter's Corner. It's me and Trent Singer from Sioux Falls Live. It's basically we bring on a player every week, although we didn't do it last week. But we bring on a player every week and just kind of go through their hockey career, how they got to the CCHA. It's really fun. Some really cool stories have come out of it. And then, stay tuned for some World Juniors coverage too.
Nice.
Obviously,
that's going to be fun.
Yeah. We got the pre-site games coming to Bemidji. And then fingers crossed if my credential request gets approved, I'll be down in St. Paul for a couple weeks and covering that whole tournament too. So, and then, but the Pioneers doing great stuff. I know Leo, our sports reporter, he's got some really cool basketball things coming out. There's some really cool stories on those men's and women's basketball teams. And so thank you.
All right, Jared Rubado, Pioneer sports editor, joining us on the Beaver Banter podcast. We'll check you guys next time.